Yes, I mean, oh my goodness. Let me just begin. There are many kings. King Henry VIII, King Solomon, King Tut, King James, King Kong. The three kings, but there is only one prince. Only one man who has defied restriction, who's defied the obvious and all the rules to the game. A mysterious figure who in a river of words will not suffice, can only be identified by a symbol. Whose music is like an internal roller coaster that takes each individual on their own separate legendary ride, and still takes listen after listen to discover and uncover even half of the story behind the intriguing and unapologetically addictive beat of music. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is only one prince. There's only one man who is so loud he makes you soft, so strong he makes you weak, so honest you feel kind of bashful, so bold he defies you to be subtle, and so super bad he makes you feel so super good. He's the only man that I've ever seen that lights the stage on fire, leaving you to burn within it in a frenzy of movement, lights, electric guitars, slides, pianos, dances, voices, splits, and songs. Oh my God, songs so powerful that you are forever changed. Songs that make you laugh and cry, think and dance. Songs that made me look at songwriting as stories that are untold passions dying to be heard. Because of him, I've never wanted to be like anyone else but myself. And because of his music, my music has wings to be different. He is the inspiration that generations will return to until the end of time. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, throughout history there have been many, many kings, both real and mythological. They have borne sons, but none of them can touch the rays from this man who stands alone. A man that I am tremendously proud and honored to help induct into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tonight, because now it is forever changed. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to get on your feet and I want you to pay homage to the one and only Prince.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Beer and Glass. We are honored to have you as a guest tonight and want to thank each of you for your faithful support. Without further delay, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Beer and Glass. Mr. Glass, take it away.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on Thursday night. Tonight, we're going to talk about a very important subject. But before I can even attempt to talk about that important subject, you just heard Alicia Keys doing the induction of Prince into the Hall of Fame. And anybody who knows anything about Baron, it should be two things that they know. Number one is that my two kids, I love them beyond anything on this earth other than God. The next best thing is that I am self-acclaimed number one Prince fan. Any and everything about this guy, any album, any CD, anything that he has ever created, I had the opportunity to have my hands put on it. So tonight is a very hard night. It is actually a very hard show because I personally myself feel like I lost somebody in my family. So for all of you who have never met me, that picked up the phone and called me today, text me today, email me today just to check and see if I was okay, from the bottom of my heart, I feel elated. This was my tribute to Prince as I induct him into the golden gates of heaven. Before I get to the show, Pastor A.F. Riggins, which is my good friend, my college friend, my alma mater, or whatever the case may be, Pastor Riggins' son wrote a very shocking little paragraph, a memo, that sums it up exactly how I was feeling. But the difference is, this young man is 20 years old. And I asked Pastor Riggins, which is out there on the line right now, I asked him to send me that over so I could actually read it tonight. And it says, I am in disbelief. One of my favorite musicians has died at age 57 and didn't look a day past 35. I don't even know how to feel right now. Talk about an eccentric person who could play over 27 instruments, conducted and wrote most of all of his music while creating a self-image that was unlike anyone you could ever imagine. I'm talking about a musical genius. It's just ironic because I just mentioned to someone that if Prince died, he would have music to last another 15 years with all of his unreleased songs that he's composed. I hope in heaven you send down the purple rain, because this is what it sounds like when doves cry. Rest in peace, Prince Rogers Nelson, written by Caleb Riggins, son of A.F. Riggins, senior pastor founder of Real Light Church. Before I go, Prince's favorite number was 7. Today is the 21st. 777, you put the rest. Prince wrote the song 777-9311, and every song that Prince wrote, there was a meaning to it if you really tried to figure out the song rather than the man himself. Another good thing happened today. I had the opportunity to get to work about 9 o'clock, and I called Superintendent John Tillett and said, let's go and visit one of the schools. Without hesitation, he said, okay, what time? I said 9:30, which was exactly 30 minutes from the time I picked up the phone. Next week is testing. I had an opportunity to go to the school that I grew up from, the kindergarten to the 6th grade, where I learned to play basketball and football. And I was brought back to a lot of memories today when I went to this school. I had a chance to visit Columbia Elementary School Principal Miss Vicki Bennett, who is a personal friend of mine. I was elated because Vicki started out as a little old bus driver to some, but to me, a hard-working bus driver. Worked her way through college doing 2 jobs, and now is the principal of one of the best performing schools in this parish. But not only that, I was able to go around to some classrooms. I was able to visit with Miss Kelly McElwain, Miss Susan Garcia, Hannah Cummins, and I was very much surprised that these ladies are really doing what we expect educators to do, and that is to teach and stimulate the minds of our young, bright future generations. Every time that we ask them a question regarding the test, the mantra of the school is, we got this. You talk to the principal, we got this. You talk to the teachers, we got this. More importantly, we even ask the students, and guess what they said? I'm talking about 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. They said, we got this. So to hear what I heard today, in spite of all the things that have happened, God always knows how to work out the plans. Before I go into the show with Miss Debbie Dilks, Pastor Riggins, are you out there? I know I have to give Pastor Riggins the opportunity to come off of mute. But if he's not out there, what I want to do, Pastor Riggins, can you sum it up? Can you sum it up for me before we get off into the show? Your son wrote this very good passage. And you, as well as myself, you were not able to listen to some of the music because your dad was a minister and you grew up in one of those homes that had a lot of respect. Just briefly, Pastor, sum it up the best you can from a divine spiritual aspect as to what has taken place and how can we move forward.
Oh, thanks, Barry, for the opportunity to talk tonight and give a tribute to Prince, and also thanks for featuring my son's post today on Facebook. I grew up in a home where all I could listen to was gospel music, but as I listened to Andre Crouch and other groups like that, you can see that the influence of the R&B and pop was involved in their music. And when I went to school, I then began to listen to Morris Day and Prince. And there was one young lady I even spoke to on Facebook today, and she said she didn't believe I remember this. She sat in front of me in my freshman class, and she had all the words from 1999 on the back of her shirt. It starts off, I was dreaming when I wrote this, so forgive me, sue me or something. You know how that line goes.
Correct.
And that drew me to Prince. And another friend of mine today, I spoke with him on Facebook, classmate, and he went to the Prince concert when we were juniors in Houston, Texas. And, of course, he was a teenager when he went. And so the assistant principal called his grandmother and tried to tattletale on him because he came back to school telling everybody in the small town about what happened to the Prince concert. And it was so erotic and everything, he didn't want to know about it. But as I listened to his music and began to hear what Prince was talking about and read about his life story and found out he was a spiritual being, he read the whole Bible as a teenager, and he began his walk spiritual outside of what he did in his music. And today I was able to watch Larry King interview the Larry King Live in 1999 with interview with Prince. And three things he brought out. First thing Prince said was that his music was a calling. He felt it was a calling. His music was a calling. He was called to do what he was doing. He wasn't doing it for the fame and the fortune and the glory. Second thing he talked about was the fact that he said, what kind of genre is your music? He said, my music is inspirational. Mm-hmm. And the third thing he talked to Prince about was, he said, Prince, why do you not want to be, have all the limelight? Why don't you just leave it all on the stage and you don't want to have all the name and everything? He said, because I'm more concerned about my spiritual walk than about fame. And so that told you a lot about the man Prince. And so while we celebrate his music and celebrate, his genius and his talent and his gift and even the way he presented himself on stage and off stage, but behind all that, he was spiritual. And the last thing I'll leave you with, and though I'm not a Jehovah's Witness because I'm a non-denominational, but one of the guys on Entertainment Tonight, the guy that's the host there, said he went one night and he got to go a lot of times and be in Prince home with him, and Prince would throw those parties all night and all that kind of stuff. He says when you walk out on the porch on the way out, you have a watchtower sitting there waiting for you to pick up. So he had his witness with him. What he believed in, he witnessed it. And we as believers got to witness who we are in spite of what we do and be a witness to the world. That's what I think about Prince.
Well, Pastor, as always, like I said, rather than try to understand the music, you listen to the words of Purple Rain. If you go to the Bible, you will find exactly what Prince is talking about. When you look at what when doves cry, when you listen to Nothing Compares to You, all of those things he's referencing to Jesus Christ himself. And I don't want to get off into all of it, but we need to understand that sometimes people are doing what they're doing, and because we don't understand it, it's probably not good to put a judgment. Make sure, Pastor, you tell...
One more thing, sir. One more thing, and I agree with you. What happened today is I started beginning to talk about Prince. One of the people that come to my church a lot, visits from time to time, said, Pastor, what do you know about Prince? And I said, don't put me in a box.
Right.
See, it's like we have to be outside the box. Prince was outside the box already and was using, like you said, symbolism to better tell his testimony. His favorite number was 7, and that's my favorite number. I'm born on October 7th. 7. That was one of the things they caught right. I'm born on October 7th, and then God's number for completion and wholeness is 7.
Come on, Pastor, you're preaching.
Take that and think about it.
You're preaching.
So you got to think about that, right? That's why you got to understand God's number for completion and wholeness, perfection is 7. And so when you think about it that way, those layers of Prince that folk can understand besides the music and the way you can sing. I mean, he had a range from a baritone all the way to falsetto, other kind of stuff, and all of the musicians. But they didn't understand that a lot of things he was talking about. Yes, he had the sexual side of him. Yes, all that kind of stuff. But they didn't understand the message he was trying to bring. His life sometimes he was thinking about, but the true message was coming out at the same time.
Right.
And I digress and let you have your show.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you, Pastor, and I'm going to digress after this. I have never been affected by death. I've never shared a tear until today. And when I found out all of this information, I left my office and went to where I find peace, which is my barn with my horses. And the very moment I got out of my vehicle, Pastor, something that I have never wanted to do, I wanted to question God, why? But I hesitated and I never did it because I've always been one of those who feel like I don't have the right to question God. Which you and I will talk about that after the show. So if there's anybody out there who feels like they want to question God, I go with what the word said, let every man be swayed by his or her own heart. So, Pastor, I'm asking that you pray for everybody that's out there on the lines, that's out there, that's going to be participating in the show. We would love for you to participate in the show tonight because it's going to be very, very informative. You see, gun control and mental health. Okay, gun control and mental illness. We're in the midst of an election cycle in which gun control is a hot topic. Opinions range from one end of the spectrum to the other. In the heat of the debate, Senator Bernie Sanders was the only candidate to mention mental health in relation to gun control. The question is, why is mental health still a taboo topic, especially in the wake of so much violence and too many mass shootings? Well, let's talk about it. Tonight's guest is Miss Debbie Dilks from Missouri. Debbie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Baron. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Debbie. Sorry for the prolonging of the show, but nevertheless, I would like for somebody to do the same for me if they admired me as much as I admire Prince. So it was my way of showing my love and my admiration from one human being to the other, from one heart to the other, from one breast to the another breast. So, Debbie, when we look at gun control and mental health, I know that this has been very, very, very dear to your heart. So let's start. Why is there such confusion or such shying away or running away from the gun control and mental health issue in your point of view?
Well, there's still a stigma that's around it, sadly enough. I mean, we've seen it over the years, and we've seen it brought to light that people still hold this stigma over it. And unfortunately, I mean, it's in every culture, too. Ethnic cultures, even more so. So one thing I did want to point out, too, was that something that Bernie Sanders did not say, he mentioned it only one time, and I wish he would have said it more, was that his intentions is to make mental health care part of the single-payer health care plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important today. So my thing is, since it's such an avoided topic, I think it's just something that we really need to get out there and talk about to draw the stigma away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Take that taboo out of the air.
Right.
So,
So when we look at specific funding for mental health, do you feel that maybe Congress, the United States Senate, and the office of the president, that those three chambers really don't look at mental health and gun control the way that average Americans such as yourself, such as progressives that are out there? I mean, why do you feel that many are running away from this or refusing to really join the two together as the same thing with regards to the problems that we're having with the mass shootings, as you referenced to?
Well, on that, there's a lot of complications to that. Because when you're looking at gun control, and they brought up doing mental health background checks, which initially I thought was a great idea. And I don't know that I still don't think that it's a great idea. The issue is it's going to be a touchy subject to get around because you're dealing with HIPAA law, you're dealing with, people's private lives, plus you're also dealing with an underdiagnosis of it because there's no funding, there's no health care in that capacity for people. It's hard to obtain. I had a friend that, actually it was my niece-in-law's brother, actually went to get help for his issues. And they turned him away. 3 different hospitals. He ran his car into a pylon and committed suicide 2 hours later.
So
turn people away. You don't have insurance.
Right.
So it's really something that government really needs to step in and look at closer.
So, Dad, when you you talk about the underdiagnosed aspect of the mental health aspect, again, do you feel that those who we elect are actually just don't get it, or do you feel like the gun lobbyists are really getting to some of those who say that? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I think it's a combination. I think your gun lobbyists are at the top of this thing. I really do. If that was even brought to light, if it was ever brought out where, this is a real issue, of course, people are going to start looking at it more seriously, but we got to make people understand where this is real. They even have in the Brady Law states that a gun cannot be purchased by someone who has been, and I quote here, educated as a mental defect, which that word kind of ticks me off anyway. They're committed to a mental institution. But yet, there's no background check for this. I mean, it's there, but there's no background check. So there's something standing in the way. My guess would be, my first opinion would be the gun lobbyists. But secondly would be, again, that it's a touchy situation about how to handle it.
So if we take, the gun lobbyists, and again, I think you would go on record to say, I know Aaron would go on record to say, and I'll go on record to say, nobody tonight is talking about taking away anybody's gun. However, we are talking about there has to be some measures and some means regarding what's going on with these mass shootings and things of that nature. So if we look at, let's say, mental health issues from early elementary level, okay, we know that a lot of kids go through a lot of severe trauma, drug abuse or whatever the case may be, and they become adults at some point in time. Do you feel that a lot of this stuff could actually be curbed if the psychiatrist or the psychologist or whoever it is that may be seeing these patients, if they were able to release this information with regards to when people go in for the purchase of guns and things of that nature, do you feel that that could be a component or at least considered part of the gun control aspect?
I think it could be, but then again, you're in kind of some touchy area there.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the issue with that is that there's a fear that they're going to include like minor maladies, such as like minor depressions and minor anxieties.
Mm-hmm.
Like the things that, I mean, even the flu, you can catch the flu and it's really serious, but it only lasts a week. You know, everybody gets a little depression sometimes that they need to have taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So the fear there is that it's going to give them too much power.
Okay, when you say give,
find a line.
When you say give them too much power, specifically, who are you referencing to?
The government. I'm referencing the government with the gun control.
Okay. So, if there is a fear, okay, and this is based on assumption and not necessarily fact, it would appear to me that this is going to continue to be an ongoing problem, specifically because if you look at racism, there's fear. If you look at women being in office, there's fear. So anything that has fear connected to it, then the masses are the 1%ers or the elites have always rejected that based on assumption and not necessarily fact. Would that be correct, or how would you view that?
I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you totally. And that fear is still there because of the taboo and you know the taboo of it, the stigma that's attached to it. And that's going to be a hard thing that we're up against. I mean, it's going to just be a hard thing to wipe out. But let me give you some statistics.
Okay, go ahead.
So among white people, 77% of gun deaths are suicides. But among African Americans, 82% of gun deaths are homicides. So, and now I'm talking about just the general death. I'm not including police actions or accidental shootings and things like that. I'm just talking about the ones you see every day on TV. So these deaths are not predominantly black on white or white on black. It's actually the opposite. It's black on black or white on white. Now, mass shootings have been growing, but are still the smallest part of overall numbers. So when you look at this, to me, when I look at this anyway, to me, it shows that I think the white population and the African American or the minority or the ethnic population both experience it. It's just that we handle it differently. I think white populations tend to internalize it, the threats, and African American and ethnic populations tend to externalize it. And with good reason, because they've always been on the attack. They've always been held down and put in a position like that. So I think there's a distinct reason there. But it's also been I also found a really great article by an African American woman. She's a psychologist, and she's done some studies on this. Her name, I can't pronounce her first name. It's oh no, wait a minute. This is Stuart Wolco's is this one, but they were she's been talking about how difficult it is for African Americans and ethnic communities to get mental health care in there because of cost, because of the stigma. Stigma is actually higher in ethnic populations than it is in Caucasian populations. So is it that it's too costly to get in there, or is it that because of the stigma that's tied to it, they can put it there and it might not be used, you know? There's just so many things to that. There's so many issues to that also that we really need to get past and work around and let people know that, you know, this isn't it's not something to be ashamed of. You know, we all suffer from some degree at some points in our lives. It's just a fact. And with the government and everything beating people down and taking their jobs away and feeding them with horrible water conditions where they can't take care of their children and all these other things, I mean, that just compounds it so much.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they expecting, you know?
Right.
I would never expect anybody to go through that without suffering through some form of depression or loss of hope or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we've got to deal with that as a population.
Right. So do you think that on the local level, the state level, or the national level, where do you feel that this should be addressed? Because, from what I'm hearing is that mental health is mental health. There's no discrimination as to who can actually be involved or actually have the diagnosis. However, when you look at it from a financial or an economical stance, then we already know that healthcare just became an issue for people to actually receive it. And absent of healthcare, mental health would probably just be skyrocketing, more like probably individuals that are going to prison at mass rates or whatever the case may be. So I'm trying to figure out what level do you think people should start at least addressing this and actually pushing it with regards to legislation, whether it's the local, state, or the national level. What do you think it should start?
Well, I personally think if it's left to the state level, you're never going to see it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. They've got too many problems they're dealing with. We've got half of our states are going underwater and going bankrupt anyway.
Mm-hmm. That's
going to be the last thing on their list is mental health care. I think this has got to go to a government level, and it's got to be there right along with health care.
Mm-hmm.
Our states are not going to handle it. And plus, you're talking about legislation in the different states. It's so different.
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana is different than here in Missouri, and we're an all red Republican state. Not for long, I hope, but we are. And North Carolina, Minnesota, so it's going to have to come together somewhere else. I don't think the states will be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna bring in Aaron Hopkins while he's out there, Deb, and join the conversation. Aaron, I know that you've been able to hear enough to join in on the conversation, and of course tonight we're talking about gun control and mental health. We're trying to look at the correlation between one or the other. Aaron, when we look at gun control and mental health, and you've heard what Deb has been able to issue out thus far. What is your stance when we look at this local, state, and national level? The funding, Deb also indicated the underdiagnosis of it. I would look at it more or less the fear and the lack of funding. How do you look at this, Aaron?
You know what, Baron? I was sitting there as I was listening to Deb. Something jumped right off the page of some of the statistics that she mentioned. And I thought about a person's mindset and how it changes when they're given, I'm going to call it a false sense of power. When a person, and let me paint a picture of a person who might feel threatened, who ordinarily, let's say they don't have a gun, something happens that they feel their life is threatened, and then they don't lose their life, but they at that point it crosses their mind that they need to be able to defend themselves if that situation arises again. So now they do go out and purchase a weapon. And in many cases, and the reason I said what jumped off of the page that you read, the statistic about the suicide, homicide, and in the, let's just say in a community of, let's just say mixed ethnicities, it's almost 100% of the time when it's a homicide, that it's a homicide against a close friend, family, relative, spouse, or something of that nature. So it's what I'm getting at is the lack of control or a mental state when we're threatened versus somebody going out and buying a gun to defend themselves from a threat or harm. And so, the reason what I'm saying or what I'm getting at is what makes it so alarming to me when we're talking about the mental health side of it is how many people actually would be diagnosed mentally ill if they've gone through a traumatic experience. Because your mental state is not the same when you don't feel you're threatened or in harm's way. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So I guess the part of the mental health issue or crisis, because to me it's a crisis. When we talk about mental health and being underdiagnosed is devastated. Okay, so think about young men and women coming back from war. What is their mental health status? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
These things go undetected, and then at the same time, most of the time, these are people who also feel their rights are being violated if they're not able to get a gun or own a weapon. And in my mind, I'm saying even the average American who probably maybe not be tied in any way to military or law enforcement, in their minds, having a gun or owning a gun is a right. It is a constitutional right. But are we really talking about defending ourselves in a situation where we might find ourselves in harm's way? I think if people are honest, they would say, no, it's more of the thought that, I'm exercising my constitutional right, but how many people are really going out and buying guns because of that reason?
And Aaron, you bring up a point that really kind of brought a little bit more light to me. Deb, let's take we have kids that are in school, enroll in school. And we are able to, and I'm talking anywhere, I'm just generalizing the conversation, and we are able to track those kids from Head Start, pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, and we see those mental issues, Aaron, that exist in whatever community from which they come. Okay, now, we know that these kids have exhibited these qualities, these characteristics of being unstable and or having a slight impediment when it comes to the mental function, which we would call it, there's something that's dysfunctional about this situation. Aaron, Deb, why should those individuals, and it's just a question, it's not a position that I'm taking, I'm just asking, why should those individuals not be considered to have a mental disorder that might prohibit them from owning a gun until further notice or further therapeutic situations can be resolved? See, because when you look at it, like Deb said, this thing gets to become a hell of a lot more complicated. So let's look at that equation. How do you feel about that, Aaron? Is that a good summation of why mental health is very important when it comes to what we're talking about, gun control?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you went in that direction, Dan. Let me put that picture out there in this way: the young man who murdered the 9 people in South Carolina was almost immediately stated to have some sort of mental health issue after the murder. Now, let's take a young man in, let's say, South Central Los Angeles who goes into a store, points a gun at a store clerk, pulls the trigger and kills that store clerk, possibly for, robbing the store for, even most stores don't carry that much cash. So let's just say he committed a murder of a store clerk, and we all know that the sentencing off the top is going to be different. But who asked the question, or is the question ever asked, did this young gentleman who committed the crime in South Central Los Angeles, was his mental health ever brought into question? And I'm saying it because most of the time, almost 100% of the time, nobody's going to bring his mental health status up.
Aaron, and that's what I was talking about, though, is in a lot of these cases, is that this is because of the stigma. They just don't want to confront it. And our schools are so ill-equipped to deal with these young people that actually have real issues. I mean, these counselors in these schools, they're not therapists.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're there to help with school issues, not the real issues such as that. And they will take these kids, they'll try to send them on for help. But most of these families can't afford that help. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. And that was my major in college. I almost finished. These are expensive. You're talking $150 sessions nowadays.
Right,
$200
exactly.
sessions.
Right.
People can't afford that. You know, so we need to. If we're talking about young people and getting them young, we're going to have to get better care into our schools that can help and catch it young.
Right, and Deb, that's exactly where I was going. Go ahead.
And what I was going to say, when he was mentioning the people coming back from war, from overseas and stuff, our soldiers and stuff. You know, I think he was trying to allude to PTSD. Well, PTSD is not just limited to our armed forces. PTSD happens in everyday life. Children can suffer PTSD from the conditions they're living in.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we had our house fire and my son died, I suffered a form of PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Not long term, but it was there. I mean, this is, and not as chronic, you know, as but it is there.
Right.
So these are the things that people need, you know, that the schools that people need to start looking at too, is these conditions that are creating this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Deb, let's look at what you just said, and Aaron, I think you would you can chime in. Anybody else is out there? Okay, let's take somebody who was in perfect condition. They leave here and they go to war, or they go to some type of situation, or they go through some type of traumatic situation in life that changes them from having a normal state of mentality to what we're talking about tonight, a form of mental illness. Okay, they already have a gun, or they are a gun owner. And I'm not trying to draw the distinction for an argument for somebody that's out there listening. I'm trying to let people see how complicated this thing can be when you talk about gun control and putting in elements. Because if that person has a temporary mental illness, then should they continue to have the right to own that gun, knowing that mental illness can be attributed to some of these mass shootings that we're having? How do you see that, Deb? And then, Aaron, I'll bring you in on it.
Okay, well, let me tell you a little story. My grandma got sick. She had cancer, and we brought her in hospice. My family, I grew up outside of Kansas City, so I kind of have the benefit of having lived in an area that's small crime, that now I'm in a rural area where people actually depend on their guns to feed their families.
Mm-hmm.
For here, you know. So I see both sides of the coin. But, I got lost there.
Well, that's okay. Just take your time. It's okay.
The original question, though, was, somebody already owning a gun.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So when you look at that, my grandmother was sick, and they brought in hospice. And my family owns guns because they hunt. They live in rural Missouri, and they hunt. They take about 8 years to feed their family.
Mm-hmm.
Hospice will not come into that house unless their guns are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because the possible mental instability of the elderly with dementia and things like that, and they get scared, and so in those situations they take them away.
Which is exactly, Deb, what I'm getting at. And I'm not talking about long term, because I want people to understand. I'm talking about minimizing or mitigating the circumstances of something like this happening. I'm not talking about just coming in and taking away somebody's thing, but I think somehow, some way, we need to look at that aspect. Wouldn't you think?
And yes, and I think in some instances, if it is something that's minor, I think we need to start paying more attention to our families and our friends and things. and listening and learn about the signs of suicide or possibly, lashing out at somebody else. There's signs there, and if we learn those, maybe we can intervene with that and go, okay, look, we need to step back from this. Let's take all this away. We had a man in my hometown of Warrensburg. He took his guns to the police station. He had a family of 8 children and a pregnant wife.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 children and a pregnant wife. He took his guns to the police station, tried to give the guns to them because he knew he had suffered from schizophrenia.
Right.
The police station did not take his guns from him, even though he tried to turn them over and tell them. He went to the mental health place there in town, tried to turn himself in. They would not take him. What happened? He went home and he killed his pregnant wife, 4 of his children, ran them down in the field. It was the most devastating thing I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all they would have had to done was step in and take it away.
Right.
So those signs are there. I mean, if we pay attention and we educate ourselves on the issue, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that it hurts a bit to remove the dangers from the area until the episode passes. Like I said, some of these things, some of these health issues are nothing more than like the flu. They last for a little while, get people the help, and they come out of it. I went through terrible depression when my son died. I came out of it.
Right.
It's not forever.
Right. And Aaron, this is what I'm talking about. If you look at that classic situation that you mentioned earlier from the outset about, the post-traumatic stress syndrome and all of that. And I'm not even talking about the way I'm looking at a shooting is a shooting. Does not matter if it's mass. It could be family within the family. Somebody having a mental illness, they snap, and the first thing they go to is the gun, him or herself. Let's look at a person who has lost everything. Ends up losing their wife. I think maybe we should look at some criteria that we can look at, and if you meet a certain bar or a certain level, then maybe that can be considered. I don't really know because, like I said, it's complicated. Aaron, how do you see that?
I was sitting here and I was listening to Deb again. In my mind, I was thinking, there's instances here in Texas where, and I've witnessed this with my own 2 eyes, it's easier to go and register for a gun, a handgun, or even any type of firearm. It's easier to get a firearm in Texas than it is a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
So at the point where, and on a driver's license, sometimes there's a restriction for based on your vision being impaired, things of this nature. So if these things can be tracked, documented, in order for a person to be either denied a driver's license or for there to be a notification on a driver's license that if the person is stopped and they don't have, let's say, their eyewear on, because of their impairment of the vision, okay, then why shouldn't there be something in place like you said earlier, Barry? If I'm a person that participated in military and I was in a war, maybe not even mentally impaired.
Mm-hmm.
But what if I have a physical impairment that if I may not be able to use my left hand, and I'm a left-handed person, but I own a firearm? What's the chances that I couldn't do harm to myself because of this impairment? So I think if we look at it really carefully, there's not enough attention, in my personal opinion, placed on the people who have the right to own a firearm, but should be, within a certain confinement of one. What do you own the firearm for? Because too many times we've all seen this. People say they're using a firearm for hunting, but I guarantee you, if they had to prove every time they went hunting that firearm that they purchased for hunting was used I guarantee we find some gap there in what they're telling. So regulations are used for a reason.
Right.
A lot of folks think their rights are being violated when regulations come down, but if we're really actually, in a sense, trying to make sure that the loss of life is minimized by this, and nobody who owns a weapon should be offended by that.
Right.
Other questions that have to be asked about it.
Right, and Aaron, which goes back, you brought it up a little bit more clear. When you just talk about regulation, okay, you can go and apply for a driver's license. If you don't meet a certain bar, you're denied that privilege. Okay, it would appear to me that if we can stop a life from being taken, or lives from being taken, or we can mitigate a circumstance, because we're never going to completely stop. But see, guns to me are made for one thing. They're not made to put on a ship. They are made to kill, just like a car is made to drive. So if we can continue to allow people to have, their particular right to bear arms, nobody's talking about taking that away. But in my opinion, I feel that there are some people that just absolutely should not be able to own that particular right because of the potential danger and harm that they have. You take, for instance, if a person has gone to prison and have done that, paid their debts to society, offered probation, no longer a part of the system, anything. Should they just be able to go in undocumented that they were once, a felon or whatever case may be, regardless of what that felony is, that they should just automatically be given the same privilege as a law-abiding citizen who has never caused a problem, never been arrested? You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to figure out, but I really want to focus a lot on the mental aspect of it, the mental health aspect of it, because mental illness, Deb, in my opinion, it exists, and if we know that it exists, why we're not doing anything regarding funding or putting pressure on these people that are running for office or potentially running for office to do something about it?
Yeah, and I think we should. It's been brought up in the conversation, I know, during this election cycle. I haven't heard as much about it as I did in the very beginning. But it is. It's going to be up to people to put pressure and to start saying, look, this is a real issue in our society today, and it's not going to be just putting the gun control in place. But you can't just put the gun control into place and expect it to fix everything. You're going to have to fix the mental health issues too. You're going to have to focus on that, because if they don't use the guns, they're going to find another way to do it. Mm-hmm. So you can tackle it from both. You have to tackle it from both ends. You have to tackle it from both ends. Right.
And Aaron, when you look at once again these counterfeit politicians that run for office, that have no reason or no desire to listen to those voices that are saying, okay, nobody is saying take away anybody's constitutional right. Nobody's saying that. However, if you use and take the term that you talked about, Aaron, which is regulation, we have regulation on everything else. Well, why can't we have regulation when it comes to this? And just like education, why is there not more funding, Aaron, being put toward mental health, in your opinion?
Well, on both sides, Baron, I'm going to say it just like this. It's an issue of the will. Mm-hmm. The person willing to do something that they know is regulating the use and access of a firearm for not just the person's benefit outside of their own, it's for their own benefit as well. Mm-hmm. So the same when you flip it to the other side, when you talk about from the political side and people who are in a position to make the changes. See, that's the one thing about politics that drives me absolutely crazy. See, we allow the things that are unpopular to a one group of people make us or put us in a position to make really bad decisions. Because, and I can guarantee you, even the people who complain the most about some of these things, they complain because it's not in front of them particularly. But when it becomes a front door in-your-face issue. How many times have we heard people that were against the Affordable Health Care Act come back and say, after they were in a position where they actually benefited from it, say and apologize, I was against Obamacare one time until I got in a position where it actually helped me and saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the mindset where we won't bend our will or allow something that is beneficial to us, come into existence because it's had a bad spin on it. It's been predicted the wrong way in the media or the news. And so everybody jumps on an emotional bandwagon, but they don't look at the core of the actual issue. So from the mental health aspect of it, Dan, I'm going to say it like this. Especially in this day and time in our society, almost everybody, including those of us on this line, we suffer from some form of mental health because of the level of stress that's just existing in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
We can admit it or deny it, but I'm telling you.
And it's getting worse.
It's getting worse daily, okay? Here's a situation that we all just listen to and witness with one of our own listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So if now just think of this gentleman's state of mind trying to survive on a day-to-day basis. And he doesn't own a firearm, and he may not even want to own a firearm. Okay, so take that situation. Okay, take a person who's in law enforcement. His or her level of stress daily just trying to get back home when they, from their day of work in the community, whatever their particular job entails in law enforcement. The idea is to return and, in the fashion that you left home that morning.
Mm-hmm.
So the stress level alters the mental state. And we cannot deny that. So, again, that's why, to me, the regulation has to be there. It has to be present. So when this kind of person in law enforcement, military, when they are no longer in that same area they served in, there's got to be some evaluation that comes back and says, you know what, you served in this capacity for X amount of years.
Mm-hmm.
We need to evaluate and see where your mind is.
Right.
And that's not too often we take these kind of things personal and think somebody's actually, doing something against us. To me, I would want to be evaluated.
Mm-hmm.
For my own, I'm just thinking about my own family now.
Right.
Because Deb mentioned it, the post-traumatic stress syndrome, that's not just a particular thing that military people go through.
Right.
So, again, if we really look at things, and I know it's easy for me to say it, but it's a reality. The emotional side to a lot of these things, and the pride, the level of pride that I know a lot of the NRA people have towards their rights to bear arms. And one other thing I wanted to mention, because it came across my mind, Baron, when you were talking, we have to keep in mind that some of the things in the Constitution, and that's one of them, when they were drafted into the Constitution, the state of the country was a wartime, era in the country.
Right.
So just think about the right to bear arms when your country is actually at war with another country.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about citizens who are not at war. So,
can I interject something there, though? I know a couple of people that are very pro-NRA, and they actually view our government as a threat right now. And that's part of the reason they want to keep their guns. So, so you're looking at, that's even another end of the spectrum right there. So, because the government's doing what it's doing economically.
Right. I agree with you, Dan, but wouldn't that we also classify that as a state of mental illness? Excuse me, my point. So, I'm asking that question.
Well, I don't know.
I agree with you 100%.
I'm not a gun owner either. Well, I'm not anymore. I used to hunt when I was young to provide for my family, but now I don't have to.
Right.
So I don't own a gun. But we're the same way against our government right now. We feel the same way. We feel threatened by them. We're fighting back the best way we know how. And maybe some of those people, and I'm playing devil's advocate here on both sides. I really am. I know that.
Right. No, that's the wrong thing.
I try to look at both sides of it because I know people on both sides of it, and I get both sides. I get the story from both sides. But these people that I know, I mean, some of them have, they've actually moved as far away from Washington as they could possibly get because they feel that threatened by the government. The government has hurt their family so much, and they see the distress boiling up within the population, and they truly believe that there's going to be, that it's going to come down to a civil war again.
Right.
And I have to admit, it crossed my mind too. How are we going to stop our government from what they're doing to
Right. But see, here's Deb, where the issue is not whether a person, Aaron, should own a gun or whatever. That's not the issue. The issue is that what measures and means can be put in place, because let me just be very brutal in saying this. If there's anybody that's out there who's saying that everybody that's living on this planet, in this country, should have the right to have a gun, then I think that's mental illness within itself. Because Deb, you've already mentioned that this right here is getting worse. So if it is getting worse, and we have drug-addicted kids being born. We have methamphetamine-addicted kids being born, which to me, you're born with a mental impediment, okay? Because you're just chemically imbalanced. So if all of those things happen, somebody has to be willing to say, okay, we just can't say that, a person can't get killed a gun can't kill if a person don't use it. Well, a person couldn't shoot the gun if the gun wasn't made.
You're right. And I agree. I think that there should be provisions put in place. I personally, I keep saying both sides of things. Personally, for me, I don't think everybody should own a gun.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's just a dangerous proposition.
Right.
Then you get back into the conversations of, well, who should and who shouldn't, and it's going to be a difficult thing to do. But I think it's really something that we're going to have to face as a country and start looking at seriously.
Well, I think, Deb,
and I think that.
Yeah, I think it's not something we're gonna have to face. I think it's something that we should have faced, just like when you look at the civil rights era with the conversation of racism. We should have had that conversation 50 years ago. We've never had it. We should have been having this conversation about some type of regulation rather than waiting to 2016 and still in a state of denial simply out of a level of fear. Go ahead.
Oh, I agree totally. We are so way past where we should have been with this. It's not even funny.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I know Aaron had mentioned the shooting in North Carolina at the church in North Carolina. My personal opinion, maybe there was mental health involved in that, but my personal opinion is that was just a hate crime. Now, you go to Aurora and Sandy Hook and those places like that, I think those are clear-cut cases of just mental health issues, like serious mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Not so sure about that.
You're absolutely right there, but when I mentioned that, and I'm glad that you brought it back up again, see, there is no doubt that it was a hate crime, and there's no doubt that this young man probably did in fact have some mental health issues. So again, he was around somebody who was taking photos of him with this weapon while discussing what his plans were to do with the weapon. So, okay, if he, in fact, was mentally ill prior to committing this crime, this hate crime, then that means that somebody around him should also be held accountable for his murder because they knew about his state of being and they allowed it to happen. And the reason I say it like that is because it didn't come up that there was mental health issues present until after the people were dead. And now it comes to the point of how we're going to treat this heinous act. But we cannot deny reality and the reality of this country.
But Aaron, on that one though, you're going to have to treat the stigma first. We have got to treat the stigma first because people are not going to confront it until they take the shame out of it. People are not going to admit to it and go get help until they take the shame out of the mental illness. It's got to happen.
I agree, but what I'm saying to them is this. Okay, again, let's take a crime. Now, you know what? Let me go about it this way. When a person is labeled a criminal prior to them doing a criminal act, then it's expected. That behavior is mostly expected, correct? So if, I mentioned a young man in South Central Los Angeles for a reason, because that young man has been labeled a criminal. He could have went in the store, pulled out money, and paid for whatever his intentions were to come out of that store with, and still be looked at as a criminal. Now, this young man in South Carolina has a totally different label attached to him prior to his event. You understand what I'm saying? So, now, if you're going to interject and say there's mental health after the fact, okay, so that means that somebody is getting out of somebody's not being held responsible for this young man's state of mind, but now that he's killed somebody. You see, now we want to bring in the mental health aspect of it. That's the point I'm making, and I hope I'm making sense.
Right, and I understand it, but again, I think it's more complicated than that. I mean, there are some situations in where, like the boy that perpetrated the Sandy Hook killing, he was definitely known beforehand by his mother, by his parents, to have had a mental illness. Mm-hmm. And she continued to have guns around. Well, I guess we don't have to worry about that now because he took her out too. But in a lot of cases, people do not recognize the signs. They just don't. They don't understand, and they don't see it.
I think they recognize it there, but I think the same thing we've been discussing, the fear of having to confront it before it's too late is the issue. Okay, so we all agree that these kind of conversations should have taken place quite some time ago, correct? So the only thing that could be hindering somebody from sitting down and saying, okay, you know what, let's prevent something that we all see as a possible threat to society happening. Everybody's sitting on their hands because they're afraid of what the backlash is going to be. And see, in my mind, that's another form of insanity right there. I mean,
and you're right. There is a fear to that. Because, and I'll tell you, part of that fear too is just like Torres. He's been visiting with us the last couple of weeks. He served his time. He got out of prison. He is still viewed as a criminal, even though he has done what he's needed to do. Well, the exact same thing happens to mental patients. If they've ever been labeled a mental patient, it sticks for life.
But I guarantee you, Deb, and I could be wrong, correct me, I'm almost certain that they can still go and own a gun. Right?
They can't.
Okay, a convicted felon.
They can't.
They can't or they can?
No, they can't.
Okay.
Now, it is stated in the Brady Bill. I don't know if you remember me stating that was one of the first things I said. Mm-hmm. But the Brady Bill does state that somebody who is a known deviant, or, mental deviant, or however they worded it was terrible, or committed to a mental hospital could not possess firearms. But the problem is they don't have any checks on it. So it's there. The piece of legislature is there. The law is there. It's just not acted on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, I think, we all are agreeing that there's an issue. Okay. And I personally am saying this, is that there are some who should not be qualified to own a firearm. And I'm also saying that there should be some kind of way to prevent as many of those that should not own the firearm from having a firearm, which has absolutely nothing to do with those who should have the firearm. So again, if a person can go and get a driver's license and be denied, which poses no threat other than when they get behind the vehicle, I think that same rule should apply, because if you get behind the trigger of a gun, then you have the opportunity and the authority to kill. Is the position that I would be taking. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like I said, we're conversating on it because Deb, this is a topic that has been near and dear to you, and I'm glad that we're at least having the dialogue with it. What areas of the mental health and the gun issue would you like to talk about, Deb? Because again, this is your topic, and I want to make sure that we cover as many of those points as we can within the time allotted.
Well, I think we've really covered a lot of it. I think one piece that we have left out also, and is the chronically ill and guns. Mm-hmm. We have so many people out there who are chronically ill now and do not have the means to take care of themselves. They don't have the money for their medications. They don't have access to health care. Mm-hmm. I had an ex-father-in-law who had cancer, and he used a gun to kill himself because he was in so much pain, and he did not have insurance, and he could not get health care. Mm-hmm. Could not get it taken care of. So there's another spectrum of people out there in that area. I mean,
right, which like you said, this is getting it is getting worse. And what I'm not understanding is if it's getting worse, then it would appear to me that somebody would have the guts to be willing to address this issue in a calm civil discourse. But at the same time, it really doesn't go. Look at area most gun violence is in, is what Reverend Andrew Yerb is saying out there on the Twitter. Just tweeted a message, and you're right. The way I look at it, if it's coming from the white community, I don't care. If it's coming from the green community, I don't care. If it's coming from the purple, red, whatever. What I'm focusing on is that it's an issue that we as a country need to address, because everybody that's out there should not, in fact, be eligible to own a firearm. That's my position. Aaron, what's yours? And Deb, you can tell me yours.
I share the same position, Barry. Let me give an example of a solution that I would use, or put something that I would put in place. Deb just made an excellent point. If a person is under doctor's care and on a medication that is physically or mind altering, there is no way in the world, even if they have to surrender their firearm while they're under that medication or under doctor's care, doesn't it make sense that, okay, if you know you're mentally or physically impaired, just like you can't drive a car, you can't operate equipment on your job, then that firearm should fall in the same category. Mm-hmm. Isn't that reasonable?
Well, it sounds reasonable to me. Go ahead, Derek.
Sometimes the things like that are reasonable get thrown out because folks automatically do what they've done most recently. They feel like all of a sudden you're violating their rights, when in fact you're doing something to actually you're actually upholding their rights, because the ultimate right to me is to save and sustain your life. So if you're jeopardizing it by doing something that can be harmful to self, loved ones, because you're not in your, what we would say, your normal mental state. If you're under medication, that impairs your mental state. It impairs your physical state. Mm-hmm. So there are reasonable things that can be put in place, and you said a few minutes ago, Baron, it comes down to a gut check. Mm-hmm. Who's going to be willing to go ahead and do the things that, and see, it's a popular thing. This is not a popular discussion or debate that is taking place, and that we know if it goes up the ladder to those who actually make the decisions, they don't want to confront the NRA. They don't want to confront the people who feel like their rights as American citizens are being taken, violated. They don't want to confront the folks who say, you're not coming to take my gun. And I understand that, but, you know, there's got to be a strong enough moral stand on something that is at least it's reasonable. And I don't think we've mentioned anything that's unreasonable yet.
Right. Deb, go ahead.
And, you know, I think, honestly, I think we're all on the same page.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I feel the same way. I think there are reasonable things that we can put into place. And, Aaron, I love how you put that. I am not trying to take your rights away. I am trying to protect you.
Right.
And some people need protected. They do. And, you know, I've been in states where I've needed protected. I've surrounded myself by family. You know, I'm lucky enough to have that, you know. So it's a complicated situation. But now I want everybody to keep in mind, too, of the rest of it, though, not just the gun control, those are issues that we need now in place to protect people. But in the long term, we're going to have to see health care available to the people when they need it, that moment, and not just be given 8 sessions and sorry, you're on your own. You know,
Absolutely.
We've got to get our economy back to where it should be so people can live their lives and not have to go through these traumatic things and be in these depressed, oppressed, horrible situations that they're living in.
Right.
This is the greatest country in the world.
Right.
You know, the strongest.
And Deb,
Deb,
here's what's bothering me while you're on that point. See, we keep saying that, not you, I'm just using this in general. We keep saying that we are the greatest country it is, but we're not exercising intelligence. We're exercising decisions made out of fear. We're still, have a way to go, and I know exactly what you're saying. Again, it would seem to me that if we know that this is a growing problem, okay, based on the way incest, inbreeding, and all these other types of things that are going on that contributes to mental health. I'm just not understanding why people are afraid to minimize the circumstances in which we can prevent some of these things from happening. And it appears to me that it's really just like, okay, we don't want to do anything about it. Let's just continue to do. Deb, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, we really need to start recognizing these things. And it needs to be a discussion that's on the table every single day. Because if it's not discussed every single day, people are lost in the cracks. They fall through the cracks. They don't understand that what they have is just a disease that can be fixed. But in the meantime, we've got to find a way to protect people from those situations. I never in my life ever want to see another thing like Sandy Hook, ever.
Deb, let me ask you this. Do you see any candidate, regardless as to whether it's Bernie, Hillary, Trump, Cruz, anybody really bringing this beforehand and stressing the issues on this?
Definitely not the Republicans. As far as I'm concerned, they just didn't shoot everybody. I mean, that's my opinion. But
yeah, and that's fine. Yeah,
Hillary, I think Hillary probably has good intentions somewhere in there, but she takes too much money from the NRA. Bernie has a moderate view on it. And I kind of feel like that's what I have to. I kind of feel like I'm kind of a moderate on it. I think, I don't necessarily want to take people's guns away or, keep them from pursuing.
Right, Deb. But again, we
that people don't need guns. There are.
Right, but
we have to face that.
Right, but again, we've prefaced the conversation by saying that we're not talking about taking away anybody's gun other than those who do not qualify to own a gun. What I'm going to do right now is open up the lines and see if there's anybody else that's out there who would like to engage in the conversation. We have any caller that would like to engage in the conversation at this point? We got about 8 minutes left. Any caller?
Baron, I don't know if I'm on the line. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Rep.
Now, I believe that the gun itself is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the person that has the gun, the attitude that the person have the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And then too, I believe that certain areas, low-income areas, that's the problem area. And people that do have a mental issue, and that's one thing that I think nobody really want to get into is discussing the mental issue, and everybody see somebody somewhere during the course of a day that you could recognize that have a mental issue.
Right.
Now just put it in the mind think that person have a gun, and you can see and notice that he have a problem. Now what would he do with the gun if he had a gun?
Right. Hey, Rev, I'll agree with you 100%. But I think my position would be that even in the low income areas, a lot of those shootings, I'm not sure they are attributed to or specifically to the mental illness aspect. However, a life is a life. So regardless as to whether it's being taken by ignorance, greed, jealousness, or drugs or whatever, it all falls back into that aspect of gun control and mental health does have some type of correlation between the two. Would you accept that premise? Rev, are you still out there?
Yeah, come on.
Okay, that premise there alone, is that something that is workable or meaningful enough to where people can look off into? Because the very moment we start to putting a class or a title, then it's going to become that race issue, which I don't think the gun issue is a race issue. I think the mental health issue or the mental illness aspect is an issue that we just need to really need to address. And if we can't find people that's willing to sit down and make these hard choices, because Aaron Hopkins, I think you would agree that hard choices can't be made based on emotions. They have to be made on logic. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Right.
That's the reason why we're in the state and having this discussion, is because there's been such a long time and a long history of these kind of decisions and even discussions being avoided. And I want to say this real quick so Deb can close out. On the going back to the mental health side of it, one of the things that cannot happen, as well as the current healthcare situation, when a person is diagnosed with whatever mental health issue they have, we have to make sure that there are real solutions being given, and that they're not just diagnosed on one day and the same issue goes on, it's prolonged, they're not really getting any help, but they've been diagnosed. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
That's one of the things that also has to go into formation of these, whatever policy comes about. And just think about the style of campaign that Donald Trump has had and what it has done in a very short time to people who may not even maybe not have been diagnosed.
Right.
But the whole issue has now been brought to the forefront on their reaction to the words that he's put out there in the world. So, Deb, I'm glad you put this topic out there.
Right, and I'll tell you what, Aaron, I'm going to let Deb close out, because what we're going to do is we're going to bring this topic back up again when Nikki and Dave can join along with Corey, and hopefully a Rev that's out there can join in along with Pastor Riggins, because I know that they are actually avid hunters and things like that. So again, the sportsman's paradise, and what I'm talking about is putting something, a measure in place that can at least minimize just like they put breathalyzers in trucks to stop drunk drivers or hopes of minimizing. What I'm talking about is doing something similar to that. Now, how do we get to that point? I don't know. Debbie Dilks from Missouri has been the co-host of the show tonight. We've been talking about gun control and mental health. Deb, I'm going to let you close it out.
Right. Thanks, guys. And Baron, I really appreciate you giving me this chance to
We're not finished.
Subject out.
We're not finished.
Yeah, okay. I hope not. I want to see it go on.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you, it's one thing I can urge people to do is we can start on our own. We can start as individuals, listening to our families, listening to our friends, paying attention to what's going on in their lives. And we can start by taking action within our own circle to help this. We can go to the legislature. We can go to our legislatures and have our voices heard and keep pushing them until they do something, until they do listen to it, until they do take some steps, or at least until they start talking about it. I'd be happy if they start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well,
and, but yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, and the Donald Trump, I think we just got to leave them out of it because we're not going to get anywhere there.
Well, Deb, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this while we're on this. Why don't we look at doing something, gun control and mental health, at least once a month? We know that April is about to close out, so whatever date that you are available on a Monday night or Thursday night, we'll continue this conversation, this dialogue, in hopes of bringing maybe some psychologists on, some social workers. I know I can bring Dr. Salisbury, Dr. Broder, Dr. Savage, and some of those guys on to talk about the mental aspect from those who are qualified. I mean, because I don't want to crowd your schedule because I know that it is busy. However, at some point in time, we have to, make some exceptions to the rule if we really want to get to the core of what this problem is. So we'll talk about that via text or whatever. We got about, not text, but Twitter. We got about a minute left. Deb Dilks, thanks for hosting the show tonight, co-hosting the show. Reverend Yerby, thanks for calling in. Aaron Hopkins, as always, thanks to you. I know Aaron is working on his show Monday night, which is the Prison Pipeline, and it's going to be a very, very, very good show. Deb, we want you to join us Monday night, as always. Rev, if you can join us, and anybody else that's out there listening. Thanks for listening to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass and Debbie Dilks and Aaron Hopkins tonight, talking about gun control and mental health. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful night and hopefully a prosperous Friday day throughout the weekend. Have a good day.
Thanks, Aaron. Good night, Aaron.
Good night, Deb. Good night, Glass.
Good night.